Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and John Nichols, the Washington correspondent for The Nation magazine, thenation.com, on the line with us. Hey, John.
Hey, it's great to be with you, Tom.
Great to be with you, too. You live in Madison, Wisconsin.
I sure do.
And you would think, watching the media these days, that the only Republican scandal going on in the country is New Jersey and has to do with a bridge, but Scott Walker, your governor, seems to be having a few problems. Can you tell us what's going on out there?
Sure, Tom. What if I said to you that there's a Republican governor involved in a front page of the newspaper lead of the evening news scandal that involves the very revealing emails of top aides, charges that he put friends and political allies into positions for which they were not qualified, and a host of revelations about secret politicization of his office and, ill use of his public position. You would probably say we were talking about Christie.
I think most people would, yeah.
But every one of those things is happening today in Wisconsin, statewide. All of the media, front page of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, a newspaper that endorsed Scott Walker for governor and opposed his recall, top of the fold across the front page stories about the governor knowing about, being involved with, a secret system of using his political appointees, people who are serving on the public payroll, to do campaign work, which is completely illegal, as well as just an immense amount of additional information. 27,000 pages of emails have come out as part of a legal proceeding, as well as 400 legal documents. And what these show is that Scott Walker was, at the very least, aware of, and by most indications, highly engaged with, a politicization of his office that in many ways parallels exactly the kinds of things that people have had concerns with regarding not just Christie, but Tom Corbett in Pennsylvania, Governor LePage in Maine, and several others.
Or Richard Nixon.
Sure, there's a lot more documentation.
I mean, at its core, this is what Nixon did.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because you would go there, Tom. You know the history, and you know about secret taping systems and things of this. But this is interesting because what is revealed here, which elements of which we knew about before, but what's revealed here is that when Scott Walker served as Milwaukee County Executive, the position from which he ran for the governorship, his aides set up a secret routing system within the office so that his public employees could sit at their desks and use laptops that were run through this secret router system and thus could communicate directly with the campaign and do campaign work. And literally one of these aides sent, if we're right on that, people are still counting them, roughly 3,000 fundraising emails while at work.
Whoa. Now, two real quick questions on this, and I'm expecting you can expand considerably on these questions. But number one, is a federal prosecutor involved yet, or will there be one? And perhaps more importantly, number two, or maybe not more importantly, but number two, if Scott Walker can succeed in keeping this a local issue, in other words, everybody in the state of Wisconsin knows he's corrupt, but nobody else in the country knows. Conventional wisdom right now, at least here in Washington, D.C., from the Republicans that I've talked with, is, and I've had several of them come on my program to debate me on various issues, and I say, who are you going to run? Christie's down the tubes, and they go, Scott Walker, of course. Conventional wisdom is Scott Walker is the guy that he's the great savior that the Republicans are going to turn to in 2016. Is it possible that he could still do that and just not carry his own state?
Well, in fact, as you well know, no Democratic candidate for president has lost Wisconsin since 1984.
But you don't have a lot of electoral votes there.
No, not a lot. But if you're talking about that, carry his own state, the polling suggests people aren't particularly enthused by the idea of a Walker presidential run. Although he still polls reasonably well in a very divided state as the governor. But here's the interesting thing about this story. Some of it people know. remember, he was the subject of a John Doe investigation, which is a form of investigation where a county prosecutor sets up a tribunal that looks into a host of issues related to presumed crimes. Mm-hmm. Out of that initial John Doe investigation, 6 of Scott Walker's aides were charged with crimes. One's in jail right now. Another faces jail time. Several others have been convicted. And so you've got you have things that have already happened. This did not go to a federal prosecutor. It continues to be run through state and local prosecutors. What we know from press reports is that there's a second John Doe inquiry that is now in play, and that takes many of the issues raised by these emails, which relate, again, to the first one, and updates them and some of the same players coming into an investigation of the period after Scott Walker became governor. And so there are inquiries going on, and that gets to the heart of your question, Tom. You're asking, can this guy go national? Can he be their presidential candidate? I can tell you right now that there are a lot of Democrats who would love it, who actually probably would contribute to get him as the candidate, because this guy...
I mean, that's what, John, I think you're old enough to remember what Democrats were saying about Ronald Reagan in early 1980.
Different game. They said that about Reagan because they didn't respect him as a communicator. They didn't respect him as an individual. I'm saying this because this guy is carrying baggage that is very, very heavy. It's not the same baggage as Chris Christie, but it is a guarantee of future revelations.
Right.
As this whole thing was playing in Wisconsin today with these 27,000 pages of emails and 400 legal documents coming out yesterday, there was a study that came out detailing the politicization of his economic development efforts, where literally money going to the legislative districts of political allies at an incredibly, an undefendable pattern. And it's with an agency that has had a number of other scandals and controversies.
In other words, he's using state and federal money to punish his opponents and reward his allies.
Does that sound a little like Sandy funds?
Yeah. Well, and again, it sounds like Richard Nixon.
What I come to here, though, Tom, is this core thing. You can like Scott Walker or dislike him. You can approve or disapprove of him politically. I am telling you that just as Chris Christie has been, I think, written out of the 2016 presidential race, not merely because of what's happened, but because of an assumption of what will continue to come out in the weeks and months to come. Scott Walker has similar problems.
So, John, there are some who would argue, and I think you might be one of them, that Scott Walker is more the creation of the Koch brothers than anything else, that without their money, he would not be governor, or at least a lot of the things that he's done would never have happened. What does this mean for the Koch brothers in the minute we have left?
Well, it's a serious problem because, you remember, Chris Christie was also something of Koch brothers' creation, a guy who they invited to their national events and celebrated it at a very high level, so we're certainly very excited about. And so they keep trying to spin people up from outside Washington who are very reliant on them. Remember, if you're at the state level of politics and you want to bring in a lot of outside money, some of these big national donors become very, very vital to your future. And so they've had a lot of influence with these governors. They've tried to spin them up. But, boy, when you start to play that game of being deferent to big money, of treating politics more seriously than anything else, including governing, you start to create a record, and that record comes back to haunt you. I think it is problematic for the Koch brothers.
Yeah, this is very, very interesting. You know, the billionaire era of politics and what it has brought us. John Nichols, the Washington correspondent for The Nation magazine, thenation.com. John, as always, thank you for dropping by today.
It's a great pleasure to be with you, Tom.
Thank you for your brilliant insights and your great reporting. We will be back right after the break, 15 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Stick around.